Well, welcome to this InterAcct software demonstration. We're going to be looking at the job costing system in this demo and indeed the job cost accounting transactions that can be posted against a job. Now we'll do this in three stages. Stage one, I'm going to show you, I've just added a new business name to the business names database as a client. And then stage number two, once I've shown you the client database, I'm going to go in and add a new job for that client. So I'll enter a completely new job, and I'll show you the process of doing that, which is also on other video demonstrations as well, by the way. And then once I've actually added the new job, then I will create a little job budget for that job. So we've got some budget figures against it and break that budget down by phase of works. You don't have to have a budget, of course, to post accounting transactions, but I wanted to then, as step number three, when I started posting the various accounting transactions, timesheets, expense recovery, stock issues, all those sorts of things, and purchase orders and whatnot, I wanted to be able to go back to the job and show you the budget versus actual costs versus variance analysis that the system will calculate for us. And that's basically the purpose of this demonstration. Okay, so I'm going to just go into, this is a typical main menu we're looking at here, of course, for InterAcct. So I'm going to select menu number 2, which is the business names database, and do a quick search on a business name that I've just added. By the way, I could have searched by company name over here, surname, first name, phone number, email address, or even the client by postcode search to find that name, but I'm going to go to the central database and do that search. Now the name I've just added is Lawney Properties, so as the help text says, just type in the first few characters of your name to start the search, and I'm just going to press the enter key there, and it comes up with a list, and here's the one I've just added, which is Lawney Properties, so number 3, so I can just click on 3, or just in this case press enter, and it will call that record up. Okay, so this is the name I've just added. You can see it's dated the 27th of July, which is today's date. I've given them a status of being a client, as opposed to a prospect or some other thing. I've classified them in terms of a category of medium size. Now this table you can set up to suit yourself, of course. There's many different ways of categorizing your clients. The origin of lead was website. Again, you can have origins there, any number you like there. And we do profit and revenue analysis by origin of lead, of course, in the system. I've tagged that Jeff H is the salesperson looking after this particular client, or the project manager or salesperson or account manager, call them what you will. And I've also classified the customer type as being a property developer down here, number 14. Now the reason for that is that when we later do a job and start to do job invoicing, these sorts of classifications of customer type and salesperson will automatically attach themselves to the invoice and hence be posted through to all sorts of revenue and profit analysis by source of lead, by customer type, and by account manager. So you can basically analyse where your revenue is coming from, and more importantly, where's your gross profits coming from. As you can see here, we've also added an email address and a website address. If we click on the email address, it will open up Microsoft Outlook automatically and allow you to send an email. You can keep a history of those emails being sent there, of course. And of course, if you click on the website address, it'll link straight through to their website. Okay, so quite a big menu here of different things. Multiple contact names. I've got 2 contact names here, Peter and Brett, with phone numbers and what. I've got a free format notes file where I can cut and paste information in here from outside the system. I've got delivery or site locations. I've actually added 2 site locations. One client can have any number of site locations, which is particularly relevant in areas of the building industry where people are working at multiple sites, or certainly building repairs as well. I haven't added much else here. I have gone into some of the debtors information and defined a credit limit and a price level for pricing materials to this particular client. And we could here set up contract hourly rates for timesheets that we're going to be working on by labour class. I haven't done that in this case. It's not important to do that. Okay, so the client has been added, and so all we need to do next, step number 2, is add a job for this client. Now, just to make things complicated, if you like, there are not 1 but 2 places where you can add a job for a client. The quite common way is right underneath the client itself. So we call up the client as we've just done, and as you can see, menu number 7 here is client jobs and inquiries. There's none in there at the moment, so we can add a new job at this point just by clicking on that plus key up there, or the plus key on your keyboard, either way. or just in this case press the enter key. It'll put us into add mode. So we can add the job there, or if we go back to the main menu, let's just do that. I'll click on this little home key here. Back at the main menu, the one right underneath business names is inquiries jobs. So this is a central register of all jobs which we can now search on if we wanted to. I'll just press the enter button or start search. So we've got some existing jobs here. So now that the client's been added, we can actually add a new job for that client right here, right in the central register of all jobs. Either way, the two files update each other. So the central register of jobs, which is what we're looking at the moment, and the list of jobs for each client, which sits under the client record, those two files get updated simultaneously. Alright, so now let's go and add a job for this client. Okay, so let's go and add the job now under the business names as opposed to the central list of jobs. So I'm going to go back into the business names database, search on Lawning again, finds the list, call it number 3, and that will take me straight into the client file. And let's go into menu number 7 now. Here's the list of jobs which there aren't any at the moment, and let's just press the enter key and it'll put us into the add mode to add a new job. So let's go through now to the fields that we're going to be seeing as we add here. So it's asking us the current job status. We can start it off as an inquiry, and then later when we win the job it'll change it to being work in process or job 1 now waiting commencement. So let's just say at this early stage it's just an inquiry. Now that status will change automatically for us too as we do an estimate or a quote, and indeed when we win the job we can change it again. And you can also, if you go and start to post transactions against the job, you can set it so that it will change automatically to work in progress. Or you can have checks to make sure that it is in work in progress and warning messages come up. Okay, moving on. Next field we're asking here is the job types. Now these little tables pop up automatically. You don't have to do anything to the software to have them come up, so they prompt you all the way through. As you can see, you've got help text down the bottom as well, so if you're not sure what this table means, there's basically an online operator's manual that's following us all the way around the system. And we can choose any type of job here. Look, you set up this list to suit yourself, and this job type will determine how you want to post the revenue for this job into the general ledger and all sorts of things. What menu structure you want to see is all controlled by job type. So let's just say, I don't know, for our test case, let's just have a building construction job. Okay, next field is the job category, and again you can have any number of these categories to suit yourself, but we're going to say it's new work as opposed to repair or warranty work. So I'll just press enter there. It's asking us now what is the site location, the site address. Now we can choose from one of these two that we've already got on the database for Lawny Properties. You can see it's got Lawny Properties name there now. Or we can create a new address on the fly. So we could close this down by just clicking on the close down button and go into create new addresses on the fly and then come back and continue adding this job. I'm not going to bother, I'm just going to select one of these addresses, and it's brought in the site location. It's also brought in all the phone numbers from the client file. It does allow us to add a site phone number as well, so let's add one of those. Anything you like there. Okay, and lastly it's asking us for the project name or job name as the client would describe it. And let's just say, what are we going to do for this construction job? Let's say we're going to build a new warehouse and office complex. And a little extra comment if you needed that there. It's an optional thing again. We might just say it's a two-story building, iron roof, and let's just say it's got 120 M2 office space. Alright, that's enough. That's just describing it. So we know where the property is, we know the client, all sorts of things about this job so far. We could have put in a reference number that the client has given us in terms of their purchase order number or works order number. We could have also put in a follow-up date. It's brought through an estimate automatically for this type of work. Now we can change that estimate. Obviously $100,000 is pretty light on for building a whole warehouse and office complex, so let's just say it was 1.2 million, might be a little bit more like it. Follow-up dates, by the way, will update the follow-up diary, but basically we've now added our job. Now at this point, even though it's only set to an inquiry, we could start putting some accounting transactions straight away against this job. Now it will warn us to say, look, sorry, you're only at an inquiry stage, and we can of course open the job and change the status. But there's nothing now to stop us starting to add accounting transactions. Now I'm not going to do that just for a moment. What I'm going to do, and I won't bore you by showing you all the steps of creating the budget, but I'll go and create a budget for this little job, just some basic figures. I won't bother doing estimating, that's one of the options, or a quick estimate or a detailed estimate. I'll hold off doing those two things. Really we're focused on this particular demonstration on accounting transactions. And by the way, those accounting transactions for this job are sitting right here under menu number 7, which is where it says transactions and processes. So let's just go into that. You'll see where we're actually going to be heading in a moment. The accounting transactions. Okay, so all the different accounting transactions here, cost transactions, are all listed out here, and they will include raising purchase orders, as you can see, issuing stock to the job, doing timesheets, recovering expenses and sundry costs. Obviously we're going to have creditors' invoices as well for suppliers, and subcontractors' invoices. They may be against works orders, of course, in terms of their claiming against a works order. So all the transactions you're ever likely to want in terms of putting costs against the job are right here sitting underneath the job. But once again, I suppose again, if you might argue to complicate matters, our job transactions are in two places. They're not only under the job, as in fact we saw with jobs being under the client before, but job transactions are under the job. And if we go back to the main menu, again I'll just click on this return to main menu home button up the top. Coming back to the main menu, they're also under the jobs menu, the accounting transactions for jobs. So if I just go into the jobs menu here, here's a start of them here, starting at number 20, including in this case with opening balances, but all the timesheets and again all the different types of job related transactions that you can do are all listed under the jobs menu. And not surprisingly, if I come out of that particular menu and go into the accounting menu, where we see all the accounting transactions, now this may be covered by obviously access rights in terms of your security of your system, but under the accounting menu we have once again all the job cost transactions. So you can put if you're the accountant, you can be putting in transactions, timesheets, stock issues, purchases, creditors, invoices, all those things under the accounting menu. They're going to post to the job, and they're also going to update those files that we saw underneath the job, which was all the accounting transactions by job. So there's basically a mirror file, so you can see, but in both areas, in this case you can see all timesheets and all stock issues and all subbies claims, etc. But under the job you can just see just those transactions for one job, and that's the advantage of it. You don't have to search when you call up a job transaction. If you're under the job, it's just going to show you transactions for that one job. So it's a really convenient way of showing information in two different places. Okay, so what I'm now going to do is I'm just going to pause and go away, call up my job. I'm going to add a job budget, and I'll show you that once I've actually completed it. Okay, so in the interim I've now put some budget information against our job. So let's call up the job. This time, rather than going through the business names database as we did before, let's go straight to the central register of all jobs, which off the main menu is menu number 3 in this instance. It'll come up with a search screen. We don't need to bother searching. I'll just click on the Start Search button, and here is a list of existing jobs in our little demonstration system. They list out in reverse date sequence or reverse job number sequence, so that will always allow you to see the most recent jobs at the top of the list. And the one we've just added, as you can see, is at that top, so I'll just press enter to call that one up. And what we're seeing now is the job header screen, which we saw before, all the same sort of information. What I've done since the last segment was to actually put in a budget, and I've broken that budget down into phases. Now I could have done previously a detailed estimate, or indeed a quick estimate, but a detailed estimate allows you to copy an estimate to a budget. Well, I've short-circuited that process by going straight to doing a budget. And here, as you can see, I've broken it down by 6 different phases. There is, of course, no limits to the way you can break down the total job into phases of work. So I'll just call up one of those phases just to show you what's been done. This is a summary screen we're looking at here for this case, the design and construct phase. And you can see that it's got a budget, group of figures, both cost and sell and profit, and quantities in terms of hours. and actual costs and a variance. Now there's no actuals yet, we haven't got to that stage of putting in actual costs. Now how these figures were created is in fact at the lower menu. So in this case we can break it down into our own direct labour, which we've got some labour here. You can see we've got a leading hand for 4 hours, one person. We could also, if we call that entry up, again it's the same familiar budget actual variance analysis. No actuals, no variances of any particular note at this stage. We can put in free format work instructions, which are work notes, which again can print on the budget report if you want to have that to basically tell what this person should be doing. And later we can put in some variations to the budget if we have a variation that we want to put in our budget as well, and that will update the variation cost and cell. Okay, we've also under this particular phase of design and construct got some trades or subbies, and we've got an architect and some engineers, consulting engineers involved in this particular phase. Probably no materials. Let's just see if there's any sundry cost. Oh yes, we've got some council fees or some other such thing here adding to the cost. Now all these three areas summarise up into here and give us both the budget cost, the cell, and indeed the budget profit. Okay, well, I'll just use the page down key to bring up the next phase, and you can see that this particular phase is excavation. And we can go into the subbies and trades, and we can see we've got a subcontractor here for excavation. Once again, I'll call that one up, just press enter or click on number 1. And you can see here, this is one of the options you can have, which is to have what we call work tasks associated with the subcontractor. And basically you can list out all the sorts of work tasks that this subcontractor, in this case excavation, would do. And all you then need to do, it'll copy these across automatically, so it saves you an awful lot of typing time. All you need to do is put in a budget quantity. The system automatically calculates based on an agreed contract rate for that subby what the budget cost is. It'll mark it up and also calculate the budget cell. So all that's done, we're just simply entering the quantities on the list, just like a spreadsheet if you will, and everything posts up automatically. So if I just come out of that, those totals come up into summary for excavation, and of course go into the phase of being excavation. I don't know if we've got any materials involved, no, or other sundry costs. It was just subbies in that instance. So I'll page down again and get to the next phase, which is footings and formwork. We might have some of our own label here. Here we've got some tradespeople involved for various budget hours here. You can see that's been calculated. We'll have subcontractors, we've got form workers. In this case we may not have work tasks. No, we don't. So work tasks are set to no, so we can just put in in this case a contract price for that particular work, or it might be an hourly rate if that's what you've got. Probably no materials. Oh yes, we have a formwork. We've got the concrete and some steel rod and reinforcing mesh. So if I call up one of those products there just to show you what that looks like, here we've got quantities. Now if you have linear meters or square meters, it can calculate all sorts of different ways. In this case we're allowed with a 5% waste. It's brought in the last cost, $180, and a markup of that cost by a factor to give us a sell price. We can link in via the next menu to the stock item itself. So here's the actual stock item. It's got where we got all that information from in terms of cost and sell, and it shows us, by the way, a bit unusual in this case, we've got some concrete in stock. Rather silly in this case for the concrete, of course. Anyway, it just gives you a bit of an idea of budgeting for materials. You can have a variety of different units of measure, and that'll all calculate through with wastage and so on. Any sundry costs? Probably not. No. Okay, mini machine costs. Well, in this case we've got a machine cost. This is a piece of plant and equipment, a power generator we're going to be using for 5.5 hours. So that's been costed into the job as well. So you can have your own plant and equipment, just the same as you could have external hire of plant and equipment being added to the job budget. Alright, construction phase. Now here we've got various builders, in this case electricians, and once again we've got the ability to break down the construction phase by all the different work tasks. And in this case I've just got general construction work where we've got a price per square metre of $2,850 per square metre, a contract rate per square metre to build a warehouse. But again you can see you could break that right down into individual work tasks if you really wanted to. Same with electricians. You don't have to do it this way, you could just have a contract amount, but if you had an agreed contract to do various things such as power points and fluoro lights and all those sorts of light switches and so on, if you had contract rates with your Sparky, you can just put those in, and then again all you have to do is put in the quantities. As you can see, they're highlighted here in yellow, and that all you need to do is put in that quantity, and everything else is automatic. It'll calculate out the cost and sell. Alright, so that's just a little bit of a rundown in terms of how the budget was entered. And one of the other things we did was actually do a little quotation based on that as well. Now the quotations, there's several different areas within the job we can prepare a quotation. One of those is in relation to quick estimating. Another is in relation to the detailed estimating. We have several different quotation formats are permitted. But in this case I've just done the quotation based on our budget, and I've also broken down the quote into different little phases again, but in this case the phases are slightly different to the cost phases we had. This is how the customer wants to see the quote broken down. You can have special clauses as well, and free format notes, but if I just print the quotation, you can see the sort of thing what it's going to look like. I mean, the layout can be again personalized like all the reports within InterAcct to suit yourself. So here what we're seeing is a quotation page number one. You can see the headings are broken down here in bold. We've got a contract rate, we've got some lines of text and comments. You can have up to 5 lines plus the heading, and right at the end of this quote here we've got the grand total with a GST, plus some clauses, and you can choose those clauses you want. Obviously you can set those up to suit yourself in terms of the text, etc. And we've nominated the salesperson that's handling it, so his name and title's gone to the foot of the screen. So that's, and of course when you're printing the quote you could actually send it to create a PDF file and email that straight away as well. Alright, so that's just showing you a quotation stage which has been done. Now all of that's flowed into the financial summary, and I'll just show you that. It's quite a big screen. Financial summary is broken down into costs, sell figures, and what's been invoiced. We haven't actually done any billing yet, but here you can see the budget sell and budget cost, and down here even the budget profit. We can see the contract price was different to what we actually quoted. We quoted, you see here, the quotation is 662,250, but we actually got the contract at 670, rather different. And we've actually had a variation to contract agreed with the customer already, so we've keyed that in as well, and that's showing here in total the total variations. I can show you that later on if you'd like. And so we're just basically seeing all the grand totals. We haven't got any actual costs yet, and nor have we got any committed costs, which are the totals of purchase orders for materials on suppliers, plus any works orders on subcontractors for services. So we haven't put any transactions in it just at this stage. Now I'm going to go back into that transactions and processes screen, which is a pretty big screen where we're seeing basically the engine room of the job. And what I wanted to show you is that when we opened the job up, we went into this area where we actually defined the contract value, which was set at 670. We defined it by what we call billable phase. Now the billable phases don't have to be the same as how you break down your job cost phases. They can be in a completely different format as the client would like to see it. So you can decide on this on a job by job basis whether the billable phases are the same as your job cost phases or not. So we've defined the contract value, we've broken it down by each of these phases, and we've also done predicted billings based on the period under which we're going to do the work. And in this case we've got a variation coming in period 7, but all the others are listed out in terms of the period under which we're going to start the job. Period 1 being when we're going to start, in which case we've nominated it being this project starting in August 2010. So this is where we also put in the variation to contract, and you can break the variation down much the same way as you can by line within the quote. But in this case we've got a variation where we can have comments and headings and calculations and notes, of course, free format notes. And then if you wish to print the variation to contract, in this case we can nominate when it was approved and who approved it and all those sorts of things. So here's the actual variation to contract report, which of course again you could print or email or fax or whatever it may be, depending on how you set it up. Once again, it's designed so that you can do a 3-way fold and put it in an envelope with the address, but of course you could email it. The layout can be personalised to suit yourself. You would obviously have your company's logo up here. Okay, so what I've really shown you so far is we created our job. we did a budget for that job. I'll just go right back to the job header now. We created the job, we went in and put in the budget by phase, we did a quotation, which we don't have to do, of course, and then of course we opened up the job, and when we opened up the job we defined, so obviously it was in work in progress now. We also defined that who the project manager was. We had a contract number offered by the client. We also had the basis of the contract, how it was won, being defined, all those sort of things. And then from there we actually could create what's called an employee work schedule. We've got just Brandon here as the project manager starting off doing the preliminaries, but we could add all the other employees that might be scheduled by date and time to do various work tasks in there. And that's actually a precursor to doing a timesheet, if you've seen the timesheet video. Now then, as I say, we went in and did the predicted billings, which we also did by month or period within the job to give a job cash flow. So that's really all we've done so far. We're really at a perfect position now to, I'll just go to this word, job open details, perfect position to go in to do the accounting transactions and all sorts of different processes, including timesheets, which is really the subject of another video, but we'll briefly touch on that just because that's a pretty big area in terms of job costing. But we'll work through these different menus next step and show you how to issue stock and put expenses and creditors' invoices against the job, and purchase orders and works orders, all those different things. Okay, well, with the first job cost related transaction we're going to talk about is in relation to materials or stock items that are required for this job. Now, what you can do, of course, is starting off, you could have done a detailed job cost estimate, or estimates plural, and those estimates would typically, of course, include materials that were required for the job. Now, in this case, we didn't do that. We went straight to entering in a budget, you might recall, by phase, and for one of those phases, or a number of those phases, we entered materials. Now, those materials automatically go into a little summary here. We've got a budget summary, and let's just have a look at a summary of all the materials required for this job. You can see a list of the materials here and the quantity required. If we call up one of those materials, just to show you, in this case we needed 55 of this steel rod, 55 meters, and we've grossed it up with a 5% wastage to a total of requirements of 57.75. But when down here in the to purchase area, we've got actually 60. In other words, we've rounded up the 57 to ordering 60, requiring 60. Now in this case here we've got some available, as you can see. Some is actually on order, which is the 60 as it happens to be. But we had at the time 25 available in stock. Okay, so from that budget entry, what the system does, it automatically updates this required to purchase file. So this is a summary of all the materials required by way of purchasing, and you can see some of these items are steel and so on, and all the 57 quantities are here, what we need to purchase. And in this case here, we've actually already raised purchase orders, and it's showing you what we've actually purchased. We haven't yet reserved any that have come in, because none have come in actually, and we haven't yet issued any to that job, and as you can see, we've yet to issue those quantities. So that required to purchase, quite a useful file. And what happens then is you can go down to an area called auto purchase orders, menu number 21, which we've already run in this example, and you can automatically use that required to purchase file to create what we call pro forma purchase orders. Now you can call up a pro forma purchase order and change the default supplier to an alternate supplier. You can change the quantity being ordered, of course. You can change the materials being ordered, for that matter. When you're happy, or in fact you could even run the purchase orders or the pro forma purchase orders initially as requests for quote, RFQs, on different alternate suppliers to get your price quotes in from different suppliers. And when you're happy with your pro forma purchase orders after changing them around a bit, you run an automatic process that will convert them into real life purchase orders. And when that happens, you can see, by the way, a summary of the purchase orders on this particular screen. You can see those are the two orders we've got out. If we call up one of those orders, you'll be able to see the line items attached to that particular order, and of course from there we can link into the stock items and link into the supplier and so on. So we've raised a couple of purchase orders in this case. If we go back to the financial summary screen, you can see it down here, menu number 55. on this financial summary screen under the cost heading, you'll see that we've now got committed costs of $32,000. Now that's a total of all the purchase orders for materials or stock items on suppliers, plus it's the total of all the works orders on the various subcontractors for their services. So it's a grand total. Now as those invoices on delivery dockets come in for those materials, the committed costs will go down, but the actual cost, which is the field above it, will of course correspondingly go up. So that's like showing you what's outstanding there. We've ordered it, but we haven't got those costs in yet. Okay, going back to this little summary here. So you can manually put in purchase orders if you wish to buy materials. You can also use the budget as a platform to raise automatically works orders. Menu number 27 is an ability to do the same thing where you've got different subcontractors or trades you've nominated, and you can put in your budget, that is, and you can actually raise pro forma works orders on subbies. Now we've actually raised a works order here. This is for some formwork, I can see, and you can have break it down by any number of line items here. You can also have the against this works order variations to the contract, but with the subcontractor, that's menu number 3, you can of course have notes on the works order, various instructions, and of course print it out as a works order. Alright, so works orders and purchase orders, works orders for materials, works orders for services and purchase orders for materials. Now, you can also, if you've got items that you don't need to purchase, they're actually in stock, you can reserve them. Menu number 22 there was to reserve items for stock, and that's where you know you need them, but you're not actually quite ready to issue them to the job. But you don't want to show them as being available and therefore open to for use or sale to other jobs or just even direct sales. So at some point, if you wish, you can reserve the stock items that you know you are currently holding in stock, but take them away from being available. When you do issue them, by the way, which is, in this case, we've got stock issues here. When you do, is a particular stock issue. Let's have a look at what we've issued. We've issued this red paint to the job. When we issue them, if that was reserved, it would correspondingly reduce the amount of stock that's in reserve, because we're now replacing it with the actual costs. So here we've actually issued some stock items to that job. Now there's also the ability, you can see it on the menu, auto stock issue number 24, and that's where you can automatically, again based on what's required for this job and what's in stock, issue those items to the job. So the whole emphasis, as you can probably work out, is if you've done an estimate, or indeed in this case done a budget, that's a platform for automatically processing your various job cost transactions. We're trying to take away the amount of admin effort and the errors associated with that to get into automatic processes where we can. Now down through here, menu number 29, we can actually put delivery dockets against the job. So that's where we receive the goods on the delivery docket that normally would have a purchase order for. It doesn't have to. And again, we can accrue the costs and put them against the job. When you later receive the corresponding creditor's invoice in relation to that delivery docket, that's menu number 30 there, you can put in the creditor's invoice. I won't bother searching, you can see there's a couple of creditor's invoices already in there. And you can put those creditor's invoices against jobs, and they will, again, if there's been a delivery docket accrual in that regard, that will reverse out the accrual entry. It will highlight any variance in the costs between the original purchase order and of course the actual cost, so you'll be alerted to that, and if need be you can go in and change your selling prices on those items. Now timesheets was the subject of a separate video demonstration. You may have seen that one already. So there's several different ways of putting in a timesheet. This is the sort of normal way, menu number 33 I should say. Quick timesheets is based on the job schedule. So when you open the job and you start to schedule employees that are going to work on that job, you can actually go straight to the timesheet entry, start the work, you click on the start button. You may have seen this in the timesheet video demonstration we did. Pause work at any time, restart the work, and when you finish, click on the end work button. If you've got touch screens, of course, it's even easier. And the idea behind this is that the system then automatically, between the start and the end, works out the hours or minutes that you've worked and will cost them automatically, and of course post them against the job and update all the various employee timesheet analysis files. Now we've also got a menu here, job cost accruals, and the idea behind that is that you can if you haven't received costs from, in this case, a subcontractor, you can put in an accrual entry. This is particularly when you're wanting to get your cost to represent your job cost to represent the actual costs, particularly when you're doing project management style reporting, or indeed wanting to support a progress claim against the client. You can just accrue cost in advance of actually receiving, in this case, the subcontractor's claim against the works order. Once the claim's been received, of course, you can just simply delete that accrual entry. So what's then going to happen is that, when you put in all these costs, the actual costs will go up, in this case $3,000 odd in the grand total. If we want to, we can see a complete ledger entry which will show those costs and a breakdown of those costs, where they've come from. If it's come from a particular creditor's invoice or subby's claim, you can link straight from this ledger straight into the original source entry. We can see a summary of the costs by cost group and by cost item. Once again, that's going to show you budget actual variance. If we call up one of these entries, you might be able to see an example of that. We just call up excavation or something like that. Doesn't really matter. So familiar, in this case we haven't got any actual costs in yet. Familiar budget actual variance analysis, and of course you can drill down from there into cost items and see the same breakdown. Okay, so let's have a look at the cost items then. So this is breaking down the individual cost items. I'll call up my materials, my Gelmet red. You can see in this case the budget was for 12.6. We've used 13. We've got a quantity variance there. The actual cost, the cost is quite different here as well. And as you can see, we've got quite a difference there in the variance analysis, a minus variance analysis, 242% out. Of course, you can search on these just to show all the negative or positive variances if you want to. So this is quite a detailed breakdown by individual cost item, budget actual variance. It's all automatic. You don't have to do anything. It's just as a byproduct of putting in your actual costs. It's just going to do that automatically for you. So really what we're seeing here, this is just purchase orders again. You can see works orders and purchase orders. Ours written off, by the way, there's the where you've put times against jobs, but you haven't been able to, you think, recover them against the client, and you can actually analyse who was responsible and for what reason and all that sort of stuff. It's one of the standard ways you can analyse employees' time, both charged and non-charged time, and of course, in this case, ours written off. Monthly billings and profits going to show you not your monthly costs and what you should bill and what you've actually billed. So it's comparing the actual cost and the markup of those costs to an expected sell and expected profit, and compare it to what you've actually invoiced out, and therefore the actual profit that you've taken up. So it's quite a neat summary, particularly for long-running jobs, to analyse the costs and revenue, both actual and expected. So this is really a summary of the job cost accounting system. Of course, we haven't gone into huge amounts of detail, but you can see the amount of analysis that you can get out of it.